This occasion marks the launch of a significant report looking at how to improve the coordination of support for families going through separation. We're enormously grateful to the Department for Work and Pensions for giving us the opportunity to undertake this piece of work. And we're particularly delighted to welcome not just one, but two ministers here to respond to the report. Baroness Altman, who's the Pensions Minister and has the ministerial lead on relationship support, and the Justice and Equalities Minister, Caroline Darnage. It's particularly important that we have both ministers with responsibility for this area here today. One of the things the report highlights is the need for cross-government coordination on this issue, so it's wonderful to see such a visible example of collaboration between departments. This also feels like a very fitting time to be launching a report on this topic. We know that the Christmas period can be a source of strain on relationships for many families. At Relate, we expect to see an increase in calls of around 20% in January each year. We know that when people are going through difficult times, they need the right support accessible to them. So why is Relate looking at coordinating support around separating and separated families? Relate is the largest relationship support charity in the UK, and we support more than 1 million people every year through information, education, support, counselling and mediation. Our vision is a future in which healthy relationships are actively promoted as the basis of a thriving society. This means we want to ensure that all of us have the good quality relationships that we need, whether we're together or separated. So although we're still best known for our couples counselling, Relate is increasingly delivering family mediation too in our centres across the country. And with the help of some of the experts in this room, including CAFCAS, the Family Justice Young People's Board and many others, we're working on developing an innovative online family dispute resolution tool building on successful work overseas. So that's why us, but why now? As many of you experts in the room will know, the issues we are raising are certainly not new. However, the current context makes it imperative to join up support for family relationships before, during, and after separation. Our rates of family breakdown today make this a priority. 42% of marriages end in divorce. There are around 2.5 million separated families with children in Britain, and 250,000 families separate each year. By the age of 16, almost half of young people do not live with both their parents. We know too that parental separation and poor quality relationships can lead to damaging consequences for children. While most separated families manage by themselves without long-term impacts on children, for a minority, the hurt, anger, and emotional turmoil of separation leads to intractable conflict. And the evidence is clear that this conflict is bad for children. But it's not inevitable. We know that there are important steps parents can take to prevent harm to children. The current landscape of family justice demands action to join up support. The unintended effect of reforms to illegal aid was an initial fall in the uptake in publicly funded mediation and a rise in litigants in person. As court became the less accessible route for many, Relate mediators have also seen cases in mediation becoming more complex. The new landscape demands that we in the sector innovate and coordinate to find ways of supporting separating families to help themselves. Government policy in recent years has been focusing on supporting families to take responsibility for their own arrangements, both to reduce demands on costly statutory systems, but also because this is better for the families and children involved. And initiatives such as DWP's Help and Support for Separated Families programme, which aims to integrate and increase knowledge and support for families to work together and find their own arrangements, and the Ministry of Justice's promotion of mediation have been very important parts of this picture. However, many in the sector would acknowledge that this hasn't yet delivered the results we all understand are needed. So convinced that now is the time to look again at how we can make a real shift towards a system that is as joined up and easy to access. And incidentally, that's also something which is integral to our proposed online family dispute resolution. So in this report, we have looked at the current system of support for families before, during, and after separation. We've trawled the literature, and we've also benefited from the expertise of many, including some in this room, in focus groups and interviews. So what did we find? We've identified 5 key challenges. 1, the information for separating and separated families is confusing and overwhelming. 2, support is difficult to navigate. It's hard to know where to start and to find services to meet people's needs. 3, the system is largely fragmented and siloed, with gaps between different forms of support. 4, demand for support with family relations tends to be expressed late on, when difficulties have reached crisis point, which skews provision towards crisis intervention. 5, children and young people's voices are often too absent from the system. It's the outcomes for children which are usually most important. So what's the way forward? On the basis of the evidence examined, we made 13 key policy recommendations for how support could be more joined up. Running through all of those recommendations is the need for a system of support which is joined up, is multidisciplinary and centred on the customer, not the agency providing the service. That promotes families' autonomy and empowers families to be responsible for their own outcomes. Supports families as early as possible and promotes collaboration between agencies, providing seamless support pathways for families. Of course, I would urge you to read the whole report to fully understand the challenges it diagnoses and the solutions that it proposes. However, I do just want to highlight 3 recommendations. The first is that a joined-up system needs to have a single entry point, a universal gateway for all separating families in their support system. And in the modern world, it makes sense to encourage as many as possible to access this online. The second is that we need to make much better use of existing resources. We have the infrastructure. Some Relate centres already offer a coordinated service, including counselling, mediation, parenting support and child contact services. The resources are out there, but they're disparate. So we are reiterating the recommendation that others have also made to bring the existing community-based resources together into family relationship centres. And the third key recommendation is that coordination on the ground needs to be matched by coordination in government. For too long, this area has fallen down in the gaps between departments. This is why it's so fantastic that today we've got both DWP and MOJ launching this work together. It's a really exciting opportunity at a very important time, and we hope that it may help us to move forward to a more coordinated and customer-centred system of support. Just a couple of thank yous as I finish. First of all to David Marchbanks, who has done an excellent job, and really impressive job in writing this report. Second to all of you in the room today who generously contributed expertise to this work and who will, I hope, continue to work with us as we seek to translate these words into action. But we also want to say a particular thank you to DWP for funding such an important piece of work and for trusting us to do it justice. Now I'm delighted to hand over to Baroness Altman, who's very kindly agreed to respond to the report on behalf of DWP.